Lindsey Robertson. She's a data science track lead, an amazing volunteer for the past year, amazing track lead. She'll guide you with the resume updation process today. And over to you, Lindsey.
Thank
Hope
you.
you all have a great session today.
Oh, I trust that we will. I know this is something that's always on our minds, and it becomes kind of a pain. It's a bit of a chore sometimes when it comes to your turn to update your resume, and it's been some time since you've done so. I think everyone kind of cringes a little bit when that happens, and I know I do. But we're going to take some of the pain out of that for you tonight, and we're going to go over some of these things together that you can bullet point and note and provide you some resources as we go. And then we'll do a little practice together as well. So by the time you're done with our session this evening, you'll feel a little bit more confident, and it shouldn't be as big of a chore as it normally is moving forward. So we're going to talk about a few key points, and we'll start with keeping it up to date. That's kind of a given, but like I just mentioned, a lot of us have other priorities going on, lots of time lapses in between needing to have a resume. Sometimes you kind of get caught off guard sometimes when you need to update that, but it's important to kind of think about your resume as you go throughout your career. Even if you're in a stable job that you really love, it's a good thing to note as you're going through your tenure with the job to make sure that you're remembering all of the major projects you worked on, all of the skills you've used, and all of the milestones that you have overcome and achieved along your journey there at the job, so that when it's time to refresh your resume, you've had a little bit of list and a little bit of practice, and some things you want to include, so it's not a memory exercise rather than just kind of going through your notes. So how to do that is just to keep a list of skills, like I mentioned, responsibilities, projects, and you can do that by just keeping your LinkedIn page updated, or you can just keep a little document as you go. I've done both, but having your LinkedIn up to date is probably going to serve you a little better as we talk about the resume, because it's important to mirror the two. Once again, feel free to go ahead and use the Q&A if something pops into your mind, and we'll make sure to cover that. So the elements of a good resume continue with highlighting your accomplishments. As I just mentioned, you're going to hit milestones, you're going to complete projects, you're going to make impact at the role you're in. And that can be achieved in many different ways. So a way to highlight your accomplishments is to make sure you're using action verbs. So instead of using passive language when we're listing our accomplishments under the bullet points of our experience, we're going to make sure that we call out the accomplishment or the skill or the project, starting with an action verb. And we'll give you some examples of that later. But this just kind of creates more of a, like I said, a more direct language. It's easier to kind of pull out what you're trying to say, and it kind of provides some concrete evidence. Here are a list of great action verbs to start off your bullet points with. So if you're going through and you're noticing a lot of passive language, you're going to want to strengthen that by just starting your sentence out with one of these. This will give you a lot of creative ideas. And don't worry about copying this down right now. We're going to make sure that you have access to this list in our Slack channels after the presentation. So you can take a screenshot, or you can just wait till that comes. So the most important thing to do is, why are you updating the resume? Generally, it's because you either have a job opportunity, you want to apply to a job, or you're seeking other opportunities, a wide range of opportunities. The best advice is to tailor your resume to the specific job. So what that means is sometimes you're creating different versions of your resume around the same time because you have a few different jobs you're applying to, and that's okay. You can have a base resume and you can just take it and tweak it just a little bit for each job that you're applying to. The best way to do that is to go through a job description thoroughly. So before you even start, just spend a lot of time reviewing the job description, get out your highlighter, start pulling out the keywords and key skills that they're looking for, the key experiences, and make sure that you hone in on what it is they want. Because what you're going to do is you're going to build that resume to provide them and serve them all of those details that they're looking for in the job description. That'll get you noticed very quickly. But we want to make sure we're keeping it concise. And this one is something I've struggled with myself. I can be very wordy, especially if you've had a broad range of experiences. Sometimes it's hard to really sum it up, into some a few bullet points on what you've been doing in that job. And a lot of us wear a lot of hats sometimes. So one thing to do is just to try to make sure you're only pulling out relevant information. That'll help you keep it concise. The most critical relevant information. So once again, refer to that job description in your highlights, and make sure you're kind of check marking off all those highlights that you made in that job description as you're trying to pick out what are the most critical pieces of information to share. So another thing to do is to break up long paragraphs. So make sure that you can kind of fit the point or fit the critical piece of information into that one bullet point and make it a couple lines. Don't make it a big chunk or a big block. The key reason is that you're going to want to make this super easy for a hiring manager or for a recruiter to read. And trust me, they spend seconds sometimes on these resumes. So you're going to want to make it very clean and professional. And a lot of times having a great format is the best way to start this. So it not only gives you like a clean slate to kind of help the reader pull out the information they need very quickly, but it can also help you fit more information into a spot if it's organized better. So you can get more onto one page. And there's a lot of debate about whether or not to use 1 or 2 pages in your resume. And the best rule of thumb is unless you've had decades of experience and lots of accolades or a large CV of research, most of the time, many of us can fit it onto 1 page. And why? Because even though you've worked so hard your entire career, everything you've done is not going to be specifically relevant to that job you're applying to. So you can find a plethora of great formats online. There really is no right or wrong format. Just know that you need to avoid using too many different fonts and colors. It can't be very flashy. It needs to be very well organized. And once again, very easy to read. And we'll show you some examples of that in a minute. So you can see here, without being an expert or a hiring manager, or maybe you have had that experience in the past, but anyone can see here that this is easier to read. The information is organized in a better way. They might have been able to fit more information into the right format versus the left. And it kind of highlights what it is they're looking for. So instead of digging for the information, it's right there in your line of sight. So basically you can pull out what it is you're looking for very quickly without having to dig and read through the entire resume. So you've just saved your hiring manager a lot of time. You've stood out because you show an aptitude for organization and presentation skills. And you've also just kind of understood the point of creating a good resume, which makes you a good candidate already. So the next thing to do is proofread and edit. And this might seem pretty straightforward, but after working on a resume for a long time, and trust me, I've been there where I've spent hours just trying to tweak it just right, change the wording, fit that one extra bullet point in that I think is really important when I might have just not enough space. So once you've looked over your resume for many hours or many minutes, you might not be as savvy at picking up on the grammatical errors or the issues that you might have in there. So the best rule of thumb is to have someone else proofread it for you, or definitely take a lot of breaks and come back to it before it's sent off and you finalized it. There needs to be no spelling errors, no formatting issues that make it illegible or just disorganized. And you want to make sure everything is up to date. Also important is that there are no inconsistencies with your LinkedIn profile, like I mentioned, because they will check. So projects is probably one of the most important parts, especially in the tech field. This is something that's going to show that you know how to use the skills you said that you had. This can go under your experience in your experiences for your job roles, or if you're just getting started out, and that's something that I did. I had a section for projects where I just listed out my personal projects, and this is totally perfect. You can put links to your GitHub, and you can pull out, the topics you're interested in and the skills you're most comfortable with here, and it highlights how you've done that. So it can be relevant, it can be also used to show that you have relevant skill set for the job you're applying to based on the type of project you've completed. And we're going to try to draw those connections for the reader and the hiring manager of your resume.
Lindsay, can we just pause right here?
Sure. Yeah.
Mansi will edit this in the recording. How about we launch our poll?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I might have missed that in there. But yeah, we would like to know kind of where you are at in your job hunt or the reason why you might be updating your resume currently. So go ahead and let us know so we can kind of help speak to you a little bit more directly. We have quite a few people pivoting. I was a pivoter myself. I've been there. And it's so exciting to see that some people are starting their first careers. I'm really excited that you're picking a technical field. That's definitely why Women in Code is here. And something else, definitely those people are proactive, I can tell. That's great.
If you choose something else, can you, like, if you feel like it, you can let us know in the chat
Sure,
what
yeah.
that something else is?
Just for the
Or
purpose
like
of us
ask
being
a
able to help.
you could ask a direct question in the Q&A box also if you're looking for something else very specific.
And also, I think it's an option, as Eliza speaking, that I think you send a message to the host and panelists if you don't feel comfortable sharing where other people can see. But yeah, we just want to make sure everyone's like feels supported because we want everyone here attending to be able to like get an awesome job where they excel at and they thrive. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
All right.
getting that interview is the first step, right? And sometimes you have stiff competition, lots of resumes for those hiring managers to review and those recruiters to review. So you want to stand out at the very onset of this opportunity. So here is a good way to organize your projects. This is a nice example here. You're going to want to have the project name and the role you played in the project. If it's a personal project, you can maybe skip that one. But you definitely want to include the relevant keywords, the metrics you used, the methodology used, maybe the outcome and the use case. Definitely paint the picture of beginning to end for the reader of your resume so they can see the connection once again between the experience you've had to the job that you're applying to. So if you can, once again, refer back to the job description and figure out how your project kind of checks any of those boxes that they are looking for. And definitely, I think I've already mentioned it, but if you can, definitely try to include any metrics. And if you worked on a project that was in a job setting, try to lean on any outcomes that created value or impact on your company and your team. Okay, so don't use projects just to demonstrate soft skills like leadership or communication. Those will be pretty simple to assert if you're a good writer, you're a good communicator, or if you get a chance to interview with. Definitely, they're looking for concrete examples in your resume. So try to leave soft skills off of there. That's a nice place to put. A nice place to put soft skills would be probably in a cover letter if you have the opportunity to do that. Or like I said, you'll be able to demonstrate your personality a little bit more in your soft skills in the interview process. So projects should not be listed under your typical job experience since they lack accountability and oversight. The paid work experience necessitates. So also don't add, I think that might kind of contradict something I said earlier. So I wanted to back up a little bit. These would be personal projects, right? And feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but that bullet point is referring to personal projects, should be placed like under a specific section on its own. And then also don't add projects just to make it longer if they're not relevant or you can't find the right connection to the job you're applying to and what they're looking for. So certainly it's definitely strategic and it's not just great to just throw any project you've worked on in there. You want to once again make it the critical pieces of information they're looking for and very relevant to the job you're applying to. So we are definitely going to take a look at some examples here and we're going to see if we can test your knowledge on how to kind of critique and work on a resume. So what I'm going to do now is go to
Lindsey, can we pause here and answer some questions in the
Sure,
Q&A?
yeah, let's do that while I'm transitioning.
Yeah, it's just before I change hats, some people had some great questions that went over some of the points you covered.
Great, yeah, let's do it.
Yep, there's 2 in Q&A and 1 in chat. Mansi, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So Megan asks in the chat, she's 1 year into data science and she pivoted, but she's wondering what she might do next and thinking about how to describe the experience on her resume.
So you are wanting to transition and you don't have any current experience, and if I'm understanding correctly, and you want to know how to transition without the experience?
I think, yeah, that's what
was
she's
that
meaning to say.
starting from
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
understanding? Okay, great.
That-
Of course, that if you're wanting to transition, you've probably been doing some self-education on some level, whether that's taking any MOOCs or just reading, doing any personal projects. So definitely, I would lean on any education that you've taken on, any education at all. You can use an education field or like a subtitle within your resume, or you can once again lean on the project. So if you don't have any experience, that's the first thing that any of us would tell you, is either to educate yourself, get a certificate of some sort, but most importantly, work on a project. Even if it's a simple, educational project you've done. That's all I had on my resume when I started out, was just the capstone projects I worked on in my boot camp. And those helped immensely. So definitely, if you don't have any of those going, get started on it. And it's okay if you haven't completed an end-to-end project yet. Every piece of it is important, and it uses some type of skill set that you'll use in the real world. So even if you've just started out and you're learning how to manipulate data structures, for instance, or clean data, say what you did, what tools you used, how you accomplished it, what the outcomes were. Is there something more specific I can address in your question?
I think that was very well structured, and like they want to see that you are taking initiative to change paths or trajectories, and they will, like, if you mention it very like succinctly, that will reflect in your resume as well. Thank you, Lindsay, for answering that. We have one more question in the Q&A box, actually three more questions. That is it okay to mention career break in resume?
So it depends on the career break, of course. There's always a case by case basis here, right? Rule of thumb is if you have any way of omitting your career break, that is a great thing to do. If, for instance, you took a break because you needed to care for a child, or you had to care for a family member, or you had some sort of situation pop up for your family that was difficult, or for you, definitely it's not a great place to talk about that in your resume. So if you did something in the interim, like you did an online class that was part-time, you can list that through for the time period that you have a gap. For instance, I definitely took a career break for a little while I was in a boot camp. I did have some consulting work on the side, but if I'm really being genuine, I wasn't taking many clients on at all. I was focusing mostly on my education. So I want to be transparent, but I don't also want to call a lot of attention to the fact that I wasn't working. So what I did was I put my boot camp experience in that experience box just for that time period that I had a gap. So that would be something you can do. If you don't have anything that you're working on to kind of omit the gap, it's quite all right to have it, because a lot of us have experienced this situation. If you get an opportunity to explain it in a cover letter, that's fantastic, because there are many transferable skills that stay-at-home moms or caretakers can offer. If you took a career gap to travel and explore and learn, there's definitely something that you've taken away from that experience that you can call to attention to and fill in that gap. Definitely, it's hard for everyone to have a work gap. We've all experienced that on some level. And I know that the workforce is definitely not kind to that, but there are a lot of creative ways to show that you are definitely a viable resource in the workforce still. And it's just about getting creative. And if you ever have any issues about your specific situation, feel free to reach out to anyone in the community on DM or myself. Even a career counselor. There could be someone, on LinkedIn that might offer a free consultation. Whatever you're comfortable with, try to kind of bounce off your specific situation with them, and they'll figure out a creative way, or kind of help you figure out a creative way of presenting that information. But you shouldn't feel ashamed of it. It happens to everyone at some point in their career. And it's quite all right, especially if you are wanting to pivot, like many of you here said that you did. That's usually because you've piqued a curiosity, or you wanted to try something new in your career. And that shows a lot of initiative and a lot of depth to your personality and to your skills and capabilities. There's something really strong and meaningful about someone who's wanting to learn something new. So play that to your advantage, definitely. I hope that helps. But
Thank you so
certainly
much,
reach out if
Lindsay.
you want to explore your
Yeah.
basic situation.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
think we can take rest of the questions towards the end.
Sure.
We will have a dedicated time for Q&A. And Lindsay, you can go ahead with what we have next for
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds great. So what we're going to do as a group is we're going to look at a resume here that might need some love. It might need a little bit of work. It might be on the subpar level. So I'm going to share my screen once again. And we're going to take a look at this example. This is not a real person. So no one needs to feel shy that we're showing somebody's resume, calling it subpar. But if we're looking at this, this is very basic and there's some work that needs to be done here. Before we kind of go through one by one on how we would fix this, some obvious things that jump out at anyone, go ahead and feel free to comment on what you would change, and we can just go top to bottom here. What's one of the first things in the chat that you would change about this resume based on what we've learned? Some things I didn't talk about, but we'll go ahead and we'll mention it as we're editing this. I see.
Oh, Lindsay, maybe we can make the font a bit bigger. I know it's like a bit thin.
Is it? Okay.
It's a thin like font face. Like,
sure. Yeah. Kind of.
let's see. Yes, now I can see it perfectly.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it's my years catching up with me. That's what it is.
I need glasses too. I'm just putting it off.
Yeah, but I'll help with attendees.
Yeah.
If like English is like not your first language, that's fine. I see some people already posting some stuff in the chat. And yeah, it's like was saying this is like based on like US, Canada, like resumes. So we have, home address and email, and like Lindsay, next part's the education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the work history and so on. So
Yeah.
it's pretty brief.
Yeah, I'm seeing some here. Some people are making some great suggestions about the heading not being very definitive and the format kind of being lackluster. The education timeline was kind of a while ago. A lot of time has passed. This is all really good editing criteria here. So I'll just kind of piggyback on what they were mentioning. We want to try to call the most important, most relevant information to the job you're applying to up to the top, right? So if this person had graduated quite a long time ago, much time has passed, is this education really all that relevant now to this job that they're applying to? Probably not. So not only would I, kind of maybe not want to mention some of this, some of this here, I might want to move it to the bottom. Good call. Yep, start with the most current to the oldest. Great catch. I see in here too, there's another question about the description on the research project. We can go ahead and put that in the Q&A. We'll address that at the end. I want to make sure that doesn't get missed. But any other ideas? And we'll go ahead and look at the exact edits.
I'll just add, I'll post in chat too. Maybe like having a resume template. Like there's so many like of versions of them online to make it
Yes,
fine.
definitely. And if once you pick a template you really like in a format you really like that fits your information nicely, it's easy just to go with that and edit a new, just save as and create a new version each time you want to create a new resume for a job, and just keep them all on hand. Make sure you title them something meaningful so that when you go back and maybe you're applying to something that was very similar to a job that you already created a resume for, it makes the editing process faster. All right, so just a quick question for the panelists and host here. Should I show the version 2 resume doc, or should we go ahead and look at the edits on that have been called out for us on the website?
We can go ahead with the PDF version of the version 2.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Here
I
is
think
the
PDF version would be better.
Oh,
yeah.
pardon me. Let me stop sharing really quick and I'll get the PDF.
No, I'll send it in chat. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, bear with me just a moment. I'm going to bring up the PDF so that we can see it better. And we can look at all these edits that you've all pretty much caught already. Okay, here we go. So definitely some good formatting. We definitely know who this resume is for. It has nice distinctive headers, and it has a nice little profile with the contact information on the side. It makes it very easy to pull out who this person is. Definitely always include your LinkedIn URL. That's important because they're going to want to check. This day and age, it's kind of important to have a LinkedIn profile, and we'll probably save that for another time. We'll focus just on the resume now. Let me see here. I'm going to stop share just a second real quick because I want to pull up some notes as you're looking at this.
That's another point I'll bring up. I think we didn't discuss one during planning, but like now a lot of companies use like the ATS, like the scanning software. So keeping like a simple template that like the software reads before like a human person gets the chance to like eyeball it. Because yeah, it's just like it's very busy in the job market right now, but it always is, right?
Yeah, and there'll be times too, you'll put a lot of thought and effort into this beautiful template and this beautiful format, and then you'll submit to a recruiter and they'll strip all the formatting down and it goes strictly into a text version. And really they've just pulled out all the meat of your resume. So that does happen a lot too. So yes, probably don't put too much energy into finding a dazzling design unless you're going for a job that is heavily design related. Okay. So once again, we've removed the address. We don't need that because that's not really standard anymore. You don't need to include your address, but you do need to have a professional email. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was a non-professional email last time, and it was probably just because she didn't put her full name. It was kind of maybe a nickname. Make sure that your email address is pretty it makes sense, you know, and it's pretty obvious who the email address is for. If you can keep it professional, then definitely the education had been taken care of as well. They moved it all the way down here and they included the most current and relevant certificate to the job. Then we have the work history, and the work history is organized chronologically, which is what you want to do. And it's nice because there's only 3 bullet points for each job. They've really just focused on tailoring it down to the most important pieces of information. And it's just a few lines per bullet point. If you can see here, there's no blocks of information that you have to read through or pull out. The interest section that they had before, they've kind of pulled that out because it's not really relevant to the job. Once again, if you'd like to include some personality in a cover letter or during an interview, that's always great and advisable, but not in the resume. It's just not the place for it. Also, they had a references on the first one. If you noticed, save yourself the space, and you can just put references upon request. And sometimes, I mean, if you don't have the space for it, people kind of these days realize that that's the standard, right? That if they're going to want to ask for references, they will. So, not the most important part of the resume. But that's a nice change that we made here. The key skills. So this is always a nice section to have, as long as you're making sure that you're touching on these skills up here somewhere in your experience, right? You want to show proof of those skills and keep it small. That section shouldn't take up too much of your entire resume, and you definitely want to focus only on those keywords that you found in your job description. So this is a very basic example of how we've just changed that really not so great resume into one that is very presentable now and very clear on what this person does and is capable of doing. It's nice that they had a summary here. And in your summary, you're not going to want to do more than a few sentences as well. And right there is where you're going to want to call out basically what you're most noted for and most known for in your career, in your professional world, and make it relate to the job description once again. So, and you can see too, if you really are hung up on not being able to put any personality or soft skills into your resume, you can also insert a few things here into the profile, or if some people call it summary, or however you want to title it. I think there's a few keywords you can use there for that. But you can see they said I for detail and the drive to further your career. So they kind of had a chance to put in what it is they're looking to do, which is really helpful, especially if you want to say you want to call attention to the job you're applying to in your resume. That's always great to show the alignment. Okay, something in the chat here. Okay, yes. Good point, keeping it to a few bullet points per experience. And also they have a lot of space here, right? Tons of space. So if they needed to add a few more jobs because they're gaining experience, or if they had projects to insert here, you got a lot of space to work with because you've really tailored it down to just the most important information. Okay. So at this point, unless we have questions, I see a few in the Q&A. I'm not sure if we're done with these ones or not.
I can add some points. I'll just turn on my video quickly, Lindsay.
Yeah.
I know it's like not everyone has access to Microsoft, so you can also like, do in Google Docs and like, submit your resume as a PDF if you can, right? And include like your name and like resume like in the file when you're uploading. Although most, job portals require you to like paste the information again.
Sure.
And
yeah, it does happen. Yeah. And I'm dreaming of the day where we, can just rely on our LinkedIn profiles to apply to jobs.
It's like the new Facebook. So I'm just like,
Yeah, right. We don't know how that's going to work out. So, given that, we want to make sure that we're still really good at making a nice resume.
I just also wanted to quickly add that if you feel that you're not able to describe everything in your resume about your project, I think interviews are a good chance to reflect that as well, because if your project will actually make an impact, you will get shortlisted. And if that is relevant to the job, you will be asked about it. So you can talk about in more detail, either in your cover letters or like the first round interviews are a good chance when the floor is yours and you want to speak about your accomplishments or what you think that is will add more value to this particular new job that you're applying to. So make sure that, and like when we said proofread and edit, it's good to like send it to someone. Like I know like it's like hard to ask for someone for their time these days because everyone's so busy, but it'll be nice to have someone take a look more experienced than you and who works with hiring managers and all to have a look at your resume if you have that chance, because another person might be able to point out a mistake. Like with coding also that happens, you're not able to see a bug, but if someone else peer reviews your code, they'll catch it.
Yeah, it's just what happens to you when you've spent so much time looking at the same document. Yeah,
I think we can take some questions. We have quite a lot coming up in the Q&A box.
Sure.
So I'll go from the first one, that is, do we need to list all our work experience related to our current role, or just the ones related, just the ones that which related to the current job, since the person who's asking has a lot of job experience?
Sure. Yeah, so that's a really good point. I definitely find myself in that position too, where all the things you work on in your current role, right? All the projects and responsibilities and experiences you have are really important to you. You want to try to put that in there because it feels really important and meaningful to you. You worked really hard on it. It's an accomplishment. But once again, if it's not related to the job you're applying to, it's not necessary in that resume. Maybe you can keep that in your base resume that you use as a template kind of starting point. It might be relevant to another job you apply to. It's good, you can have it there as a boilerplate, but definitely on the one that you submit, try to just narrow it down to a few bullet points that are very focused on the job you're applying to. So just lean on those experiences. And if you're having a hard time finding experiences that relate to the job you're applying to, once again, rely on the keywords in the job description. You can find some connections there and get really creative with that. That's probably your best resource.
Yeah, there's probably some overlap. If you did like meetings with clients, even though the content may be different, you still like help present the information, prepare like the presentation, answered questions. So because you're reusing those skills from previous roles in the new role. And it's like you're convincing the recruiter and hiring manager, like, this is how I would use that experience to excel in this role.
Yeah.
There was also another
skills.
transferable skills. Yes. There was an answered question. Lindsay from Denica. They're saying, if you didn't keep a list of your accomplishments and milestones in previous roles, I know Soumya like gave a great answer. Did you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, I don't think I got to read the response. That was wonderful. But if you didn't keep a list, think back on when you're reading the job description, once again, think back on an impact you made at that job, and you'll start to remember some of the milestones and some of the projects you worked on. And then once again, in that example that we saw on the formatting in the resumes, where it said what I'm most proud of, right? Think about that. Once you can think back to the role, even if it's been a really long time, there must be something that left an impression on your mind about how you felt when you left that job. What were you proud of when you left? And then I'll kind of give you some ideas.
You can also reach out, I think, like previous coworkers, if you kind of just remember, like, oh, because I believe some companies, they post like every quarter, like the annual reports to share with the team. And they just like, oh yeah, like that, like quarter, like the work I did, like help impact for the company. And a lot of it's like, you know, you kind of like ballpark the info. Like I know one company worked like 100-ish projects, like per week, like scanning project management, right? And I don't know if it's like, you know, is it 104 or 105? I know it's like 100-ish. So you can just like gauge if like ballpark like those numbers. But yeah, and also I think there's shoot, what are they called in US? Like the peer reviews once a year, like where you get feedback from your manager, like how you're excelling your role, where areas you can improve, and like use that information too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving forward, now you know, go ahead and save all those reviews you get. Make a bullet list. Also, if there's metrics that your company uses to report back to performance or to, you know, stages of a project you're working on, note those, because metrics in your bullet point are really powerful. Aside from having action verbs, being able to say you've grown X, Y, and Z by so much %, or you changed an outcome that was floundering and you now increased revenues, just as an example, by this much %, or, any kind of metric that can be there, just to kind of back up that bullet point is huge. It's always a really good thing to do. So as you're in your current jobs and thinking ahead, just remember to note those things as well. There's another good questions.
Yes, there is one. Louise asks, as an international student, I'm studying at Extension, which is the 9-month certificate program. I have a related technical work experience in my home country, but I don't know how I can highlight the experiences on my resume to get interview and job in the US. Can I answer that as an international student?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I moved to Australia in July, and I had work experience in India. Like, it was quite relevant to what I was applying for. The thing is that the technical aspects of the job are the same in every country. Like, time series forecasting will be the same everywhere. So I think it is like what I try to focus on and highlight is the technical aspects that I worked on, like customer attrition analysis, or like time series forecastings, demand forecast prediction, and like loan default prediction. This is something which is like common across countries. So I think also instead of using the ATS keywords, I met with a counselor in Australia, and there is like different countries formats also. So it's good to like take advantage of your university curriculum and university counselors, because they will help you tailor your resume to the particular locations that you're applying to. And I think it's just like it will be obviously a little hard, like harder than like local students. But I think if you are able to demonstrate that your skills are transferable, it'll be a longer process for you. Definitely, I'll not lie. It was harder for me than other students. But definitely, if you're able to demonstrate your skills are transferable, then you will land a job.
Yeah,
All
and
the
you're able
best.
to get the work done. I think
Exactly.
like university or colleges, they have student services or like career counseling. They're usually send newsletters, or you can like go on campus and ask, and you're already paying to use those services, so may as
Exactly.
well,
Use it.
right?
Yeah, definitely. That's a
They're
great point of having someone help you translate, like what are the terms and terminologies that they use for this. That's great. Yeah, definitely. Let's keep going here for ready.
What do we prefer to put in the job description? Responsibilities or achievements? Like, I think this question, if I'm correctly, I think the work experience section, the responsibilities or achievements.
I think whatever you are most proud of and made the most impact, start with. And then also, if it's the relevancy, I think start with relevancy and then put and then impact, and then what you're most proud of. Like, I think those would be my orders of priority if I were to focus on those bullet points.
About technical skills like programming languages, is it better in work experience or as an independent section?
They should be in both, in my opinion. Definitely have a skills section. It's nice to see because they're going to look for specific, languages and approaches and packages and things that you've worked with, technologies. So it's nice to have a little section where just kind of bullet points those out real quick, but then you're also going to want to work those into your experience as well, because they want to see examples of how you used it, because that's important to know if you're going to be able to do the job.
Right, your tech stack, right? Are you familiar with like the programming languages already using or using something similar? So like once you join the company, you can like learn it quickly. So
hopefully that answers your question there.
There's one last question. Is it important to include cover letter? I always see those are optional. Do recruiters read it?
I always include it.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. If they give you the option to do it, why not? It's just an additional opportunity to show them who you are. And if they read it or not, that's outside of our control. But at least you put some thought into it, and it kind of helps you start like your elevator pitch, what you're going to kind of start conversationally with them if you get a chance to interview. So it's helpful exercise for you anyway.
Right. And for me, like I like having conversations with recruiters, hiring managers, even like saying like, oh, you're like have this job and thinking of applying, like I want to learn more about it. And so having the cover letter, once I talk to them, I can understand, okay, this is the problem they're trying to solve. If it's not too clear from my resume, like this is like my experience and skill set, like how I can help you solve that problem. And hit the ground running, like to get the work done. Because it's like, your eyes will glaze over from like, and people are like reading like resumes, like obviously recruiters and like HR team's really awesome, like helping like that process, but like the hiring managers and the team members are also doing like a full-time job on top of hiring. So whatever's making like the path easier for them. And like I think we also said that we didn't mention this before, but like just being a good like team culture fit, right? Just recognizing, just like an environment where you're going to thrive at, these are people like you're going to spend like as much time as you do with your family or like classmates, or it's like, the volunteer community. So recognize that, like be able to show that in the cover letter. Like, I think it's a fun conversation because you will answer those questions too in the interview.
And it's a good opportunity too, if there's something that maybe wasn't so concrete or super critical that you didn't think it really belonged in your resume, but you're still really proud of it. There's a good spot you could maybe work it into your, your cover letter.
Mm-hmm. And also if like you're currently working now, like write down your achievements, milestone, like stuff, like keep track, like your wins. So even if like you're applying for a different role or just, you're applying for lateral, like, and get promoted, like you're keeping track of that information, like you're taking charge of your career too.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's
okay.
We can, Mansi, we can like pitch the career nav track.
Definitely. Career Nav Track does a lot of resources and events, blog posts. Women Who Code Career Nav, yes. I'll just quickly pull out the link and send it here.
And also if I didn't mention it before, I might have, but if you have projects you're working on, try to get acquainted with GitHub and try to put a GitHub link on your resume. That's going to go a long way. And then there's plenty of resources. Women in Code on their YouTube channel I know for a fact have resources on how to use GitHub, and all of us are a resource as well. You can just look around on people's GitHub pages and see how they do nice custom readmes. This is a whole other topic in and of itself that we can have another session on, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, see the projects the company's working on or people who work there, like something they're learning about. So you can have like that common conversational ground. I guess you can also add to like, even if you're not like a coder, because I know it's like there are other like technical roles. It's like people doing like sales or like, have to like be the in between, a product manager between like the engineers and like the clients. Just recognizing that, like, can speak like those skills to like in a resume or during application. And I know like Career Nav, they provide us helpful resources for this session, and they're always hosting a lot of events like with different companies that help support the new code community. This also be something aware of, like if you're not sure where to apply for jobs, what it's like working there, that company, with new code, they also have women who are already working there can share like their work experience and like so on, and saying like, yeah, like, you know, this is our job board, or, you know, this is like what's these are projects working on, like this is the stuff that if you want to change from this field, may be relevant for you. Yeah, that's all I've got.
And if anyone needs help reviewing a resume, don't hesitate to reach out to the community or one of us too. You can DM us. We might not be, super quick to respond, so don't wait till last minute, of course, but we would definitely love to help if you're stuck with anything specific.
Definitely. You can join the Python and data science Slack. We have a dedicated help me channel. And you can definitely, and not just us, we are a large community. There are a lot of community members that often help other people. So definitely make use of that resource that we have available.
There's so many helpful people that will just,
Definitely.
they do respond back quickly sometimes too. So, but yeah, a good rule of thumb, not to wait till last minute. I just don't like the stress of it.
All right, Eliza, would you like to add anything, Lindsey?
Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, or you're watching this recording, you can, as Mansi said, join the Women Who Code Python Slack or Data Science Slack in Bytes and Brew. Post questions you have about updating resume. We'll be sharing our resources there in the Slack afterwards. But yeah, we're really looking forward to like your feedback, how your resume looks and how you're able to get either your first or just like first job, or first job in a different field, or just coming back from like life happening. Except we were in a pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think a lot of people more are like caring, understanding, I think, of like the work climate and landscape. So there's empathy in the world. So I wish everyone like a lot of good luck and success in whatever they choose to do.